It was 4:19 p.m. when I heard the words no father should ever hear. Mr. Coleman, your daughter's been brought in with multiple injuries. The nurse's voice over the phone was shaking, but my grip on the receiver was steady to steady. Combat had taught me to stay calm, but nothing in 20 years of military service prepared me for this. I was in a dusty training hangar in Nevada running drills with my special operations unit when that call came through. I left everything gearmen mission on the floor and walked out without asking permission. Orders didn't matter anymore. My daughter did. The nurse explained between choked breaths, dislocated shoulder, fractured jaw, heavy bruising. And then the part that made my vision go red, she said my little girl Abby told her that her mother's boyfriend had done it because she'd called me a hero. I'd been deployed sacrificing birthdays and holidays to keep this country safe. And while I was gone, some coward put his hands on my child. That was the moment I stopped being a soldier and became something far more dangerous, a father with nothing left to lose. I floored the gas pedal so hard the truck's engine roared in protest, the Nevada desert blurring past my windows. The coordinates on my GPS pointed straight to Phoenix, where my little girl lay in a hospital bed hurt because some man thought he could teach her respect with his fists. The late afternoon sun poured molten gold over the horizon, but my mind was somewhere darker. For the first time in my career, after years of surviving firefights, explosives, and ambushes, I was scared. Not for myself, for Abby. The voice of the nurse from earlier replayed in my head like an audio loop I couldn't turn off. Dislocated shoulder, broken jaw, bruising, and then the part that hit harder than any bullet I'd ever taken. She said her mother's boyfriend did this because she called you a hero. 14 hours, the GPS said. 14 hours felt like 14 lifetimes. I gritted my teeth, scanning the road for cops. If one pulled me over, he'd have to ride shotgun because I wasn't slowing down. By the time I hit the Arizona border, my phone buzzed. I snatched it off the passenger seat. "This is Coleman," a deep voice on the other end. "Mr. Coleman. This is Dr. Rivers from St. Mary's Children's Hospital. Abby's stable, but she's been asking for you. I'm 2 hours out. Has her mother been there?" "She was briefly, left about 2 hours ago. Said she had things to handle at home. Your daughter hasn't seen her since." The muscles in my jaw tightened. Things to handle while her daughter lay broken in a hospital bed. When I walked into St. Mary's, I didn't feel the air conditioning. Didn't notice the posters on the wall about flu shots and child wellness. All I saw was room 212. Through the small rectangular window, I caught my first glimpse of Abby, my girl, my sunshine, and she looked diminished. Her face was pale, one side swollen, her right arm suspended in a sling, an IV line taped to her hand. She was staring at the ceiling with that 1,000-yard stare I'd seen in soldiers who'd been through hell. I knocked softly and stepped in. Her eyes moved to me, and for a split second the pane cracked, and the little girl I knew shone through. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice muffled by the bandaging around her jaw. I sat beside her bed, taking her small hand in mine. "I'm here now, Princess. I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to smile. That was Abby, always strong, even when she shouldn't have to be. The story came out in pieces, each word like a blade twisting in my gut. Mommy's friend, a man named Trent Maddox, had been living in our house for a month. He didn't like when she talked about me. Didn't like when she showed pictures of us together. Yesterday, she'd told her teacher I was a hero. The teacher had smiled, said I was probably protecting a lot of people. Trent found out that afternoon. "He said you weren't a hero. You were a killer," she murmured. I told him he was lying. He shoved me. I fell down the stairs. Then he said if I told anyone, he'd hurt Mommy too. I gripped the bed rail so hard my knuckles whitened. "Abby, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. This is not your fault." Her little brow furrowed. "Will you make him go away?" I met her gaze. "He'll never hurt you again, I promise." When she drifted into a painkiller-heavy sleep, I stepped out into the hallway. My phone was blinking with a new voicemail from a blocked number. It was Trent. "Hey, soldier boy, heard you're back. Abby's fine, just needs to learn respect. Maybe we should talk before you get any ideas about throwing me out. This is my house now. My house, my daughter." My blood was a drumbeat in my ears. In the military, there's something we call the no-fail mission. This was mine. I called Marcus Lane, a private investigator I trusted with my life. We'd worked together on joint security operations overseas. He picked up on the second ring. "Coleman, long time. Marcus, I need everything on a guy named Trent Maddox. 40-ish, works construction, black F-150 based in Phoenix. I want it tonight." "You got trouble." "He put my kid in the hospital. Silence on the line, then a growl. Give me 6 hours. While I waited, I drove to my neighborhood. The sight of that black truck in my driveway lit a fuse in me I didn't know existed. Through the front window, Lila, my wife, was curled up against Trent on the couch laughing. It had been years since I'd seen her laugh like that. I'd thought maybe it was me. Maybe deployment had hardened me too much. But no, apparently all it took was a different man. One who hurt children. I didn't knock. I went around the side yard, slipped through the gate, and unlocked the basement door with the spare key I'd hidden myself years ago. Their voices carried down the stairs. Lila, Jack doesn't even know I filed for divorce. Once it's final, we can sell this place and start over in California. Trent, 3 months, babe. Then we're set. And that brat, she'll get the discipline she needs. My fingernails dug into my palms. Recon complete. Enemy position identified. Marcus's call came just after midnight. Coleman, you're going to like this. Maddox has 2 ex-wives, both filed restraining orders. He's got assault charges that vanished when victims refused to testify. Gambling debts, 47 grand to local bookies. And he's been evicted 3 times in 2 years. I close my eyes. You find financials? Yeah. And you're not going to like this part. Your wife's been transferring cash from your joint accounts to a new one, with Maddox as co-signer. Oh, and she took a second mortgage on the house. Forged your signature. Every fact Marcus rattled off was another nail in the coffin. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a motel room with my Glock on the nightstand, writing out a plan in my notebook. Phase 1. Secure Abby. Get her somewhere Trent couldn't reach her. Phase 2. Expose Trent publicly and legally. Phase 3. Remove him from our lives. Permanently. At dawn, I called Hannah, Lila's younger sister. She'd never hidden her dislike for Trent. Hannah, it's Jack. Trent put Abby in the hospital. I need you to get Lila out of that house before I come back. There was a long inhale on the other end. That son of a okay. I'll handle Lila. But Jack, don't do anything that'll land you in prison. I didn't answer. Some things are worth the risk. Back at the hospital, Abby was awake watching cartoons. I handed her a stuffed bear from the gift shop. She smiled faintly. Daddy, did you tell him to go away? Not yet, but I will. Her small hand tightened around mine. Don't let him hurt anyone else. That's when the switch flipped. This stopped being about revenge. It became about prevention. If I let Trent walk away, some other kid would end up in a hospital or worse. By the time I left St. Mary's that afternoon, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Trent Maddox had chosen the wrong family, and I was about to show him why some men don't get second chances. The mission was clear in my head when I walked out of the motel that morning. Secure Abby, collect evidence, dismantle Trent's life from every angle until he had no way back. I'd play it smart, methodical, like any op I'd run overseas. But battlefields change, and this one was about to shift under my feet. Just after sunrise, my phone buzzed. Caller ID unknown. Coleman, I said, voice flat. Mr. Coleman. My name's Denise Holt. I think you need to hear this. The woman's voice was shaky with a quiver that told me she was running on adrenaline and fear. Go ahead. I'm Trent's ex-wife. I heard what happened to your little girl. I'm sorry, really. What I'm about to tell you, it's not easy. I walked to my truck, opened the door, and sat down, motioning for her to continue. Trent's dangerous when he's cornered. He doesn't just lash out, he plans. He'll go after the people you care about, and he's got a way of finding where they are. Her breath hitched, then she dropped the real hit. A friend of mine called me last night, said Trent told him he's going to finish the job before you can take Abby away. And he's not alone. He's got 2 guys with him, bad ones. I didn't ask how bad. I'd seen enough men who enjoyed hurting others to know the type. After we hung up, I called Marcus immediately. Maddox isn't alone, I said. He's got backup, and they're talking about making a move before I do. That fits. I spotted him last night at a bar, 2 guys with him, both covered in ink and scars. You don't get from sports. They looked wired, either adrenaline or something stronger. How soon? If they're drinking and talking about it openly, 24 hours, maybe less. And Jack, they're dumb enough to act, but mean enough to make it ugly. I've been planning to tighten the noose slowly, humiliate Trent, bankrupt him, get him locked up before kicking him out of my life for good. Denise's warning told me I didn't have that kind of time. It was time to take the fight to him. First stop, the hospital. Abby was still asleep when I walked in. The room smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and plastic tubing. A cartoon was playing quietly on the wall-mounted TV, the volume low enough that I could hear the steady beeping of her heart monitor. I stood at her bedside for a moment, taking in every detail: the way her hair was messy on the pillow, the pink hospital blanket pulled to her chin, her small hand curled under her cheek. The sling holding her injured arm looked too big for her frame. A protective rage rose up in me, so strong it was almost dizzying. In combat, you focus on the mission. Here, every instinct screamed that the mission was this child, and nothing else mattered. Nurse Jamie came in carrying a clipboard. "Mr. Coleman, she's doing well. If all stays stable, we'll discharge her tomorrow. Do you have a safe place for her to go?" "Yeah," I said without hesitation. "Somewhere no one will find us." Jamie hesitated, then said quietly, "I don't know what you're planning, but be careful. Men like him don't stop unless someone makes them." At noon, Marcus called again. "Location confirmed. Maddox is at Murphy's Tavern East Side. The same two guys from last night are with him. And Jack bartender says they've been talking about you since they walked in. Send me the address." Murphy's Tavern looked like the kind of place where neon beer signs went to die. The front windows were tinted brown from years of cigarette smoke, and a flickering open sign buzzed faintly in the corner. Inside, the air was thick with stale beer and cheap cologne. My boots stuck slightly to the floor with every step. They were easy to spot. Trent sat at the far end of the bar, a half-empty bottle of whiskey between him and two men who looked like they'd come straight from a prison yard. One had a spiderweb tattoo that disappeared under his collar. The other's knuckles were scarred white from old breaks. "And when he shows his face, we'll make him wish he never came back," Trent was saying, leaning back in his chair like he owned the room. "And that brat, she'll learn her place." The words hit like a sniper's shot, sharp, clean, and undeniable. I didn't go straight at him. Instead, I ordered a beer, took a seat halfway down the bar, and let him keep talking. The bartender, a wiry man with deep lines around his eyes, gave me a subtle nod. Trent kept going, each sentence a little louder, feeding off the nods of his buddies. He bragged about my house as if it were already his. He mocked Abby, and he took shots at my service record, calling me a government attack dog. When I finally moved, it was deliberate. I set my beer down, walked over, and planted myself just inside Trent's personal space. "You've been busy," I said evenly. His head snapped up. "Well, look who it is, the hero. You know what they call guys like you in my line of work?" I kept my voice calm. "Dead weight, coward, weak." One of his friends stood up, puffing his chest like he was in some prison yard standoff. "You looking to start something?" "No," I said, letting my tone drop lower, colder. "I'm here to finish it." Trent smirked. "What, in front of all these witnesses, you think you scare me?" "I don't need to scare you. I just need everyone here to hear what you've been saying. The threats, the plans, the part about my daughter." I jerked my chin toward the bartender. He's been listening, and so have I. For the first time, I saw a flicker in his eyes, doubt. I stepped back. "Enjoy your drinks. But if I see you near my family again, there won't be words next time." As I walked to the door, the bartender gave me another nod. The kind that said he knew exactly what was happening and which side he was on. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. "Marcus, you'll like this. Maddox's gambling debts, he owes 47 grand to guys who treat debt collection like a contact sport. We could make a call, let them know where to find him." "Not yet," I said. "I want him to make his own mistakes, the kind that bury him without me lifting a hand." Evening came fast, the desert sky bleeding from gold to deep purple. I drove to Hannah's place, Lila's younger sister, where she'd convinced Lila to stay for the night. When I walked in, Lila was at the kitchen table staring at a cup of untouched tea. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if the last few weeks had taken pounds off her frame. "Jack," she started. "Don't waste it on me," I said, cutting her off. "Save it for Abby." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know he'd hurt her." "You didn't want to know. There's a difference." She flinched like I'd struck her. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes to make sure he never comes near her again." I left before she could answer. My phone vibrated as I reached the truck. A text from an unknown number: "You're a dead man walking. Tonight." No signature, no need. The game had changed again. Maddox wasn't waiting for me to act, he was coming. And I was ready. The text from Maddox: "You're a dead man walking. Tonight," sat on my phone screen like a fresh burn. In my world, that's not just a threat, it's an operational timestamp. A countdown has started, and every second from now matters. I didn't delete it. I saved it in 3 places: the phone, a secure cloud, and a thumb drive. Evidence is ammunition, and tonight I was stocking up. I dumped my go bag onto the motel bed. Everything was where it should be. Glock 19, 2 spare magazines, tactical flashlight, folding knife burner phone, lockpicks, paracord zip ties, and the small portable camera kit I'd used overseas for recon. Laying them out in a precise line was muscle memory. Every soldier has rituals. Mine involved order. In a world going to hell, order was control. But as my hands moved automatically, my mind wasn't on Maddox. It kept circling back to Lila. For the past week, I'd pictured her as the enemy's ally. A woman who invited a predator into my home, ignored the bruises on our daughter, and chose comfort over safety. But the image from earlier at Hannah's kitchen table kept intruding. Lila, hair messy, eyes hollow, her voice carrying that thin thread of someone who knows the storm's already at their door. It forced me to consider something I hadn't wanted to. Maybe she wasn't just guilty. Maybe she was also in danger. If Denise was right, if Maddox escalated when he felt control slipping, then Lila was a potential target. And not just in the sense of collateral damage. No, he could use her. I'd seen it before in Iraq. An insurgent can't get to the soldier, so he grabs someone the soldier cares about, forces the soldier into a trap. It's effective, brutal, and exactly the kind of thing Maddox would do. That realization shifted my plan. Before, my focus was tight: protect Abby, dismantle Maddox, ignore Lila. But that was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. If I left her exposed, she might be the key Maddox used to unlock my guard. And if that happened, Abby would never be safe. I grabbed my phone and called Hannah. She picked up on the second ring. "Jack, you okay?" "Where's Lila?" "In the guest room. She's been quiet since you left." "Why?" "Because Maddox's threat wasn't just for me. If he can't hit me directly, he might go for her. You need to get both of you somewhere safe. Right now." Her voice tightened. "Safe as in a hotel under a fake name? There's a Holiday Inn 2 exits north on I-17. Check in under something like Stevens. Pay cash. No cards, no IDs they can trace. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even my boyfriend. Especially not your boyfriend. Maddox knows how to fish for information. Hannah, listen, if someone knocks on your door tonight, don't open it. Even if it's a neighbor, you understand." A pause. "Yeah, I understand." When I hung up, I stared at the wall for a full minute, thinking through the possibilities. If they stayed put, they were bait. If they moved without caution, they were targets. The hotel was the best middle ground, anonymous enough to vanish close enough for me to reach if things went south. Then I turned my attention back to the offensive. Maddox had muscle now, 2 guys who looked like they'd eat a restraining order for breakfast. That meant the attack wouldn't be a one-on-one. This was a 3-man problem, and I needed 3-man solutions. I thought about their psychology. Maddox was the talker, the ego. The other 2, probably followers. Men like that need clear orders, a leader to tell them where to swing. Take out the leader, the rest scatter or get sloppy. Sloppy was exploitable. I decided to get some intel the old-fashioned way, in-person observation. Murphy's Tavern was quieter in the late afternoon, the beer signs humming faintly, the smell of stale hops hanging low. The same bartender from before looked up as I came in. "Back so soon?" he asked, polishing a glass. "Yeah, need a name." He raised an eyebrow. "Who's his The spiderweb tattoo and his friend from last night. Roy Cutter and Leon Brick Mason," he said, his tone suggesting he knew they were trouble. "Cutter's quick with a blade, slow with a brain. Brick big, strong, and about as subtle as a sledgehammer." I slid a 20 across the bar. "You see them with Maddox again, you call me first." He pocketed the bill without breaking eye contact. "You got it." Outside, I called Marcus. "Run Roy Cutter and Leon Mason. Arrest records, known addresses, associates, family, everything." "You planning to handle all 3 tonight?" Marcus asked. "If they're with Maddox, they're part of the problem. And I don't leave problems half solved." By the time I got back to the motel, Marcus had emailed me files. Cutter had 2 aggravated assault charges, one involving a knife, both dropped when witnesses recanted. Brick had done 4 years for armed robbery. They'd both been seen at Maddox's side the past week. Not hired help, partners. That meant loyalty, or at least mutual benefit. That's when my perspective shifted again. For days, I'd been reacting one step behind answering their moves. But if I kept that up, I'd always be on defense. Tonight, I needed to pull them into my game. I grabbed the burner phone and typed, "If you want me, I'll be home tonight. Alone. No cops, just you and me." It was bait laced with ego appeal. Men like Maddox couldn't resist the idea of a showdown. He'd want the win, and he'd want to see my face when he took it. With that sent, I began the real prep. At my house, I moved like I used to in hostile buildings overseas, checking corners, noting blind spots. I set small motion sensors along the front porch, back door, and side windows. Tiny cameras went in air vents and high corners. Each feed linked back to my laptop, which I set up in the living room. The living room itself was staged one lamp on low-light TV playing low-static noise, a half-empty beer on the coffee table. From outside, it would look like someone was relaxing inside. From my vantage point, it was a kill box. But the more I worked, the more that old military instinct kicked in. This wasn't just about shooting my way out. It was about controlling every variable timing terrain in target psychology. And that's where Lila came back into the equation again. I called Hannah once more. She answered on the first ring. "You at the hotel?" I asked. "Yeah, room 214. Lila's asleep. She hasn't said much." "Good, stay put. Don't open the door for anyone, not even staff, unless you call them." "Jack, after everything she's done, why are you protecting her?" I hesitated, then said, "Because Maddox doesn't get to decide who lives or dies in my family. Not her, not you, not Abby." Silence for a moment, then a soft, "Be careful." Night settled fast, the desert sky fading from deep orange to black in minutes. I sat in the darkened living room, the glow from the laptop illuminating the feeds. Every creak of the house, every car passing outside, every shift in the shadows, I cataloged them. Maddox thought this was about rage. He thought I'd be coming at him blind with nothing but anger. But sitting there, calm, steady Glock within reach, I realized something important. For the first time since this started, I wasn't chasing him. I was waiting for him, and that was going to be his undoing. From the couch I'd staged as a decoy, the house hummed like a machine. I'd tuned myself cameras whispering over Wi-Fi motion sensors, blinking in my laptop grid, the HVAC purring at a steady cover noise lull. The living room lamp spilled a cone of amber over a half-empty beer and a remote I wouldn't touch. I sat 10 feet off that warm circle in a slit of shadow between bookshelves where the night gathered and stayed. My phone buzzed once against my thigh. "Marcus." "Update," I said. "I dug deeper on Leon Brick Mason," he replied. "He's on parole. Night curfew. No alcohol, no weapons, and he's supposed to be wearing an ankle monitor that pings every 15 minutes. I straightened. That true verified. Cross-checked with county records. His parole officer is a guy named Kerrigan. If Brick so much as sneezes past 10 p.m., Kerrigan gets a text. An unexpected door swung open in my head. That's leverage. More than leverage, Marcus said. If Brick's rolling with Maddox and he steps onto your property with a weapon that's a parole violation plus a burglary charge, you call Kerrigan and 911 and the cavalry has to come. I looked at the burner phone on the coffee table where I'd left it, its screen blank but full of bait. I told Maddox no cops. "Yeah, but you also told your kid you'd keep her safe." The line went quiet a beat, not because we disagreed, because we knew the difference between promises that kept you honorable and promises that got you killed. "Text me Kerrigan's direct line," I said, "and his shift hours." "Already did." I hung up and scanned my feeds. Front porch clear, side yard clear, alley behind the fence, cat on a cinder block tail twitching. I watched the cat look toward the street, ears up, then settle. A small thing, but animals are better sensors than any motion detector. They flinch at intention. New opportunity number one, Brick's parole. A way to end this on paper as well as on pavement. My phone buzzed again. Not Marcus St. Mary's. "Mr. Coleman, it's Dr. Rivers," the voice said, calm but not casual. "Abby is progressing faster than expected. We can discharge her at 800 if you have a safe place ready." "I do." He hesitated. "There's something else. A man came by this afternoon asking for your daughter." Security turned him away. He claimed to be family. He wasn't on the list. "Tall brown hair, forearm ink?" I asked. "Yes. We have his face on camera." He got agitated, told the guard the brat needs to learn to keep her mouth shut. We filed an incident report. Heat crawled up my neck, but I kept my voice steady. "Doctor, thank you. Please send the report to the email on file." "We will, and Mr. Coleman, Abby asked for you when she saw him. She said Daddy will come." "I told her you would." I swallowed. "You told her right." I ended the call and filed the report into the clean labeled folder on my desktop, dates times names. In my world, rage is gasoline. Records are matches. Emotion without evidence gets you a cell. Evidence with discipline wins wars you never have to fight twice. New opportunity number two. Hospital footage, words on tape. Another brick in the legal wall I was building around my daughter. A soft knock sounded on the inside of my skull memory. Denise's voice from that morning. When he feels humiliated, he goes after the people closest to you. I dialed Hannah. "Jack, you're still at the hotel?" Yes, 214. Lila's showering. Good, keep the chain on the door. If anyone knocks, don't open it, she finished. I heard you the first time. I exhaled. Text me a photo of the peephole view if anyone even breathes in that hallway. A beat of silence. He came to the hospital, didn't he? Yes, I said. And that was a mistake he doesn't know he made. I hung up and checked the street cam again. A city truck murmured past Gray, the kind with a bucket for fixing lines. It coasted to a stop at the corner, a worker hopping out to eyeball the streetlight on the pole. He tapped his tablet. The light strobed, then went dead. The corner fell into deeper dark. I watched him work his way down the block, killing every other lamp in a maintenance sequence that left pockets of shadow where there had been soft pools of yellow. The city wasn't helping me on purpose, but I'd take the assist. New opportunity number 3, darkness, my element. Maddox thought darkness was the place guys like him thrive. Darkness is only an advantage if you can see through it. I could. I rose, moved room to room, and taped 2 infrared chem lights, dim human eye, invisible at ankle height along the hallway baseboard. To anyone else, they were nothing. To my goggles, they were a runway. If it went to ground inside, I wouldn't trip what they would. The cat on the cinder block in the back alley bolted tail ballooning and disappeared. My back fence camera picked up headlights, easing down the lane, idling low, then cutting out. I froze, counted heartbeats. One shadow peeled away from the fence and squatted by the gate latch. Another stood off to the side, posture wrong for a neighbor, right for a wolf. Neither moved like brick too light. Cutter, probably. The third would be the plan, the mouth, the one who'd want the back door, the kitchen, the path to the violent speech. I muted every other audio source and dialed the gain on the backyard mic. Wind, a small clink of metal, a whisper. You sure he's alone? Shut up, another voice hissed. Just do the latch. I slipped the headset from my neck up around my ears and spoke softly like I was talking to my own pulse. 2 at the gate, I murmured more, to keep my brain measured than to inform anyone. 3rd unaccounted for. The gate eased open. My sensor blinked. A dull notch of satisfaction landed in my stomach, the blink I'd tuned for sensitive, not jumpy. If the 3rd man came from the front, the timing would tell me who planned what. Wolves think in arcs, noise there, pressure here, force you up the middle. I took 1 step left, back into the denser slice of shadow where the archway met the shelf. My Glock was flat in my hands, the front sight a black tooth I could feel without seeing. My right knee touched the bookshelf edge reference point measured off earlier. If I needed to pivot, I'd pivot off bone, not air. The back door handle twisted. A second later, the cheap metal screws squealed as the latch popped and the door swung in. A wave of night breathed across the kitchen tile. Cutter came first, shorter, sinewy, a knife-tucked reverse grip in his right hand, flashlight in his left. He swept the light, quick body too far ahead of his beam, a mistake men make when they confuse speed for skill. Behind him, a larger silhouette, Leon, ducked through and whispered, "Left's clear." I let them clear the threshold, counting 1, 2, 3 steps from the door, then stopped breathing for a beat. Still no Maddox. Where's the mouth? The front porch cam clicked. A lean shape bent in toward the door's glass cupping hands to peer in. He saw the TV glow the beer, the ghost of me I'd staged in that lamplit circle. He grinned Maddox and turned the knob. It was unlocked. I'd left it that way. Wolves love open doors. The hinge sighed. He stepped in soft-toed off his boots like he lived there and let the door ease shut. The beer and remote sat in their small yellow universe like baitfish under a dock light. He took 2 steps toward them, eyes adjusting, and that's when I noticed no crowbar, no bat, no gun in sight. He was empty-handed. Either he was supremely confident or he had a gun tucked at the small of his back. Either way, it meant he'd come to talk first to perform. Maddox was the kind of man who wanted to narrate your humiliation to your face. I clicked the recording flag for every camera. The timestamp froze in red at the corner of each feed. My thumb found the Glock's frame, then eased back to the grip. "Don't," I said from the dark. Maddox stopped, head tilting slightly like a dog hearing thunder 2 miles away. He smiled slow. There he is. His voice carried honey and gravel, the kind that sells bad ideas to drunk men at 2 a.m. He didn't look toward the kitchen where his men now crouched, his confidence telegraphing the rest of his plan. A pincer movement noise behind me. Him in front me, forced into the middle, him getting to see fear in my face. Opportunity number 4. The talker came to talk. "Turn around," I said. Hands where I can see them. He didn't. He eased a step left, trying to triangulate my voice in the dark. I took a half step back, letting my shadow swallow me again, and kept my muzzle high center. Behind him from the kitchen, Leon's boot knocked a chair. Cutter hissed a curse. Maddox flicked his eyes toward the sound for a fraction, then back to the dark. Look, he said, still smiling. We can do this easy. You sign the paper, Lila needs you, hand over the keys, and I promise you won't see me again. Man to man. You came to my daughter's hospital, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's flat board, like we were discussing weather. You told a guard she needed to learn to keep her mouth shut. He lifted a shoulder. Kids talk. Men fix it. That's life. There are sentences that rearrange a person's future. That one rearranged his. Hands, I repeated. From the kitchen, Cutter's knife flashed a hair. I tracked it by the small reflection off tile. Leon's breath was a raspy file, the kind of sound heavy men make when they try to move quiet. My hallway IR markers glowed in my goggles like faint bone pathways only I could read. I made a decision that had been building since the city truck killed the streetlights. I wasn't going to shoot first. Not tonight. Not with Brick on parole and hospital footage and a parole officer one call away. I was going to make Maddox pick his future with his own hands. Trent, I said, using his name like a lever, you are standing in a felony. You violate a protective order tonight, you go away for a long time. Your friend in the kitchen, he goes back for longer. Walk out now and you might see daylight in 2 years. Take one more step and you won't. He laughed a soft, disbelieving puff. You think you scare me with jail? No, I said, I scare you with tomorrow. He didn't like that. He shifted his weight. The front of his shirt lifted a fraction, and there it was, a compact pistol at the small of his back. I let the sight hover there, settled, then returned to his sternum. You brought help, he said. I can hear it in your breathing. You brought wolves, I said. I hear it in theirs. He tried again. Lila says you're a coward, that you hide behind the uniform. Lila says a lot of things when she's scared. For the first time, his smile twitched. Scared. He didn't like me assigning that word to anyone in his orbit. Fear belonged to other people, not him, not his woman, not his men. His chin lifted a notch, the challenge pose. His right hand twitched toward his back. I didn't fire. I let the second stretch long like taffy, then spoke loud enough for the kitchen to hear. Leon Mason, I said, and heard the big man freeze mid-step. You're on parole. Your PO's name is Kerrigan. You're late for curfew and holding a weapon. If I call him, you go back tonight. Silence poured into the kitchen and pooled there. Roy Cutter, I continued, you've got 2 aggravated assaults the DA dismissed because witnesses got scared. Ping me with that blade and I become your favorite witness in open court. Cutter hissed air between his teeth. The knife didn't move. Here's your new math, I said into the dark, the trap sprung but not closed. You leave right now, nobody bleeds. I still file the hospital footage, the threatening text, the break-in. You'll get paper that follows you into every job interview for the rest of your life. Or you take one more step and I solve the problem for good. Either way, I control what happens next. Maddox inhaled slowly, a man measuring a doorframe he intends to kick through anyway. Then I watched something flicker behind his eyes, calculation, then frustration, then the smallest kernel of doubt. He'd expected rage. He'd found a chessboard. My phone was already open to Kerrigan's number, thumb hovering. The screen's dim glow splashed up and lit the inside of my palm and nothing else. Maddox's jaw hardened. Boys, he called softly on 3. I didn't wait for 3. I hit dial. The call rang once, twice, Kerrigan, a clipped voice, answered. This is Jack Coleman, I said, crisp, professional. I have Leon Mason inside my residence after curfew with a weapon. I have video. I also have 2 additional intruders, including Trent Maddox, who threatened a child at St. Mary's this afternoon. I am in fear for my life. Kerrigan's tone changed from bureaucrat to bullet. Address. I gave it. He didn't waste syllables. Stay on the line. I'm dispatching units. Maddox's smile vanished, replaced by something feral. He lunged not toward me but toward the lamp, his hand snatching at the cord to drop the room into deeper dark. His mouth opened to give the order he'd come to savor. From the kitchen, something shifted. Not a foot, not a chair. A choice. Trent Leon rumbled, voice lower than I expected. He's got the parole officer. Cutter whispered, urgent. Man, I ain't going back. Shut up, Maddox snapped. Opportunity number 5 wasn't luck. It was pressure applied at the right point on a weak plank. Packs crack when self-preservation outruns loyalty. I took the half-beat gift. Front door, I said loud enough for the cameras. Hands high. Walk out slow. If your hands drop below your waist, I shoot. Cutter moved first the way smaller men do when the big dog hesitates. He shuffled out of the kitchen like a man stepping around an invisible tripwire. Palm's open knife dropped to the tile. Leon's silhouette followed, big hands up, head ducked. He paused on the threshold between kitchen and hall, listening for Maddox's permission and getting none. Leon, I said, this is the only decision you own tonight. His shoulders slumped. He went forward. Maddox stayed rooted to the amber island of lamplight, with his jaw clenched tight and his eyes on the dark where my voice lived. Sirens threaded the far end of the block, thin at first, then gathering. The city truck had finished its series and moved on, leaving my street in deeper night than it had known in months. My IR markers glowed like veins. Maddox's mouth worked. He swallowed something he didn't want to taste. "We're not done," he said, breath hot enough to fog glass if there had been any between us. "You hear me? I heard you the first time I said, when you put my kid in the hospital." Red and blue began strobing against the ceiling through the front windows, soft at first, then insistent. The house made a small, relieved sound, the kind an old structure makes when pressure finally lets off the load-bearing beam. Maddox took one backward step toward the door. He kept his hands out, not up. Not compliance performance. He wanted the last image of him in my house to be control, not surrender. "Trent," I said, almost conversational, "you lost the script." That got me the first honest expression of the night anger, without the smile pasted over it. He turned open the front door and stepped out into siren-lit heat. A woman's voice from the sidewalk shouted, "Hands up." Another said, "On your knees." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. In my ear, Kerrigan was a running checklist. Units on scene. Stay inside. Do not engage. Do you require medical? Negative, I said, the word tasting like metal and relief. But I'll need your email for the footage. Copy, text incoming. I lowered the Glock but didn't holster it. Maddox had walked out, but men like him didn't go quietly. They just changed theaters. On my screen, the feed showed Cutter on the lawn, face pressed to grass. Brick on his knees, hands zipped behind his back, his head hanging like a lowered moon. Maddox knelt last, looking left and right as if the night owed him an audience. The city lights stayed dead. The house stayed dark. In my chest, something unclenched. New opportunity number 6 wasn't a stroke of fortune. It was a shift in the entire battlefield leverage, obtained control, asserted the fight, moved into a venue where my discipline mattered more than his bravado. For the first time since Abby's whisper in room 212, "Will you make him go away?" the answer felt like more than a promise. It felt like a plan that was working. The blue and red strobe washed over my living room walls in uneven pulses, each flash snapping the edges of furniture into sharp relief before dropping them back into shadow. Outside, the muffled cadence of commands, "Hands behind your back. Don't move," spilled in through the cracked front door. I stayed where I was for a beat longer than necessary. Old habit let the adrenaline ebb before stepping into a new theater. If you move too fast, you carry the fight into the wrong room. When I did stand, I kept the Glock low but in hand and stepped to the door. The air outside had that electric chill that comes after tension breaks, but before your body admits it's safe. Cutter was face down on the lawn, wrists zip-tied, muttering something to himself. Brick knelt a few feet away, the weight of his frame, making the grass bow under his knees. His head hung low, his chest rising and falling in slow, heavy pulls. The breathing of a man who knows his next address is a cell block. Maddox was the last in line. His wrists were cuffed in front temporary until they got him standing, and he kept scanning the street like he was searching for someone to witness this and take his side. Every few seconds, he'd test the cuffs, rolling them against his palms, but the officer at his elbow didn't even blink. It struck me that this was probably the first time in months Maddox wasn't holding all the cards. The man lived for control. Now control was a zip tie away from gone. A voice to my right drew my attention. "Mr. Coleman." I turned to see a tall man in a windbreaker with parole officer stenciled in yellow across the chest. His hair was close cropped, and his eyes had the hard focus of someone who'd spent years talking to men who lied for a living. "Kerrigan," I asked. "That's me. Leon Mason's P.O. I got your call." He extended a hand, professional, firm, but with a flicker of curiosity in his expression. "I'll need your statement and whatever footage you've got. I've got multiple camera angles, audio timestamps, plus the text threat Maddox sent me," I said. "Hospital incident report, too." His eyebrows rose. "That's a good start. Mason's done for the night, probably longer. This violation's airtight. And the other two, Cutter's on probation, different officer will handle that. but he's not walking away. Maddox? Kerrigan's gaze shifted toward the man in cuffs. That's going to depend on your follow-through. Without a restraining order violation on paper, they might try to spin it. I nodded. Then I'll make sure it's on paper. Every word, every second, every angle. As Kerrigan walked me through the next steps where to send the files, how to word my statement so it stuck, I kept one eye on Maddox. The man's expression had shifted. Less smug now, more calculating. He was measuring me, deciding if I'd fold once the cops were gone. He was wrong. Inside, I sat at the laptop and began dumping the footage into a secure folder. Every clip got a clean file name. Front porch, 217 R's kitchen entry, 2101 ER's Maddox dialogue, and 2120 ER's. I'd learned the hard way overseas that evidence without organization was almost as bad as no evidence at all. While the files processed, my mind wandered back to Abby's hospital room. Her small hand in mine, the way her eyes had tracked the doorway, like she was waiting for him to appear there. If she knew he was in cuffs tonight, she'd sleep easier. Not safe yet, but easier. 20 minutes later, Kerrigan returned with 2 uniformed officers. Mr. Coleman, these officers will take your initial statement. We'll want to set a time tomorrow for a full interview. I walked them through the events from the text message to the moment Maddox stepped outside. No flourishes, no speculation, just facts. The officers scribbled notes, asked a few clarifying questions, and nodded. Sounds like you handled this without escalation, one of them said. That's good. Keeps it clean. I didn't tell him that the only reason it stayed clean was because I'd chosen it to. That was my win to keep. When they left, the street was quiet again. The city truck had fixed the lights, but the corner where Maddox first appeared was still dark. I stepped out to the sidewalk and looked down that shadowed stretch, thinking about all the nights ahead. Tonight wasn't the end. Men like Maddox don't vanish because they've been embarrassed or locked up once. They reappear different time, different angle. But tonight had shifted the terrain. I had his words on tape, his men in custody, his face on every body cam in a 50-foot radius. And I had something I didn't before, proof to anyone who mattered that this wasn't just my word against his. Back inside, I locked the door and sat down in the same shadowed spot between the bookshelves. The house was still wired, still watching. And for the first time in a week, I let my shoulders drop an inch. Marcus texted, saw the cuffs. You good? For now, I replied. We've got leverage, we use it. Because leverage, I knew, was the only real safety. Guns, locks, and cameras could be beaten. But once you had a man's future in a folder of files, every step he took was in your territory. And Maddox had just stepped all the way in. Morning in the desert doesn't creep, it arrives, like it owns the place. By 6:02 a.m., the horizon was already a wash of pale gold, burning away the shadows in seconds. My street looked calm, almost too calm, as if last night's chaos had been a bad dream I could shake off with a strong cup of coffee. But my body knew better. Every muscle ached from hours crouched in one position. My knuckles were still stiff from holding the Glock too long. And in the back of my mind, the echo of Maddox's voice, "We're not done," ran on a loop. I hadn't slept, not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't. You don't sleep after a night like that. You review, you replay every move, every word, every detail, and you look for holes. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the moment you think you've won is the moment you stop preparing, and that's when you lose. I stood in the kitchen with a chipped mug of coffee staring out at the street. A sanitation truck clanged past its driver, giving me the kind of nod men give each other when they recognize a certain kind of night in your eyes. Ordinary life was moving again, but mine had shifted into something else entirely. Last night had been a win, but not a finish. Maddox would get arraigned post-bail and walk free. Cutter might strike a deal. Brick's parole violation could keep him locked up for a while, but not forever. This wasn't a game I could win once and walk away from. That was the shift in my thinking. I'd been playing defense. Now I had to take the offense. Not to attack recklessly, but to control the ground so completely that Maddox couldn't make a move without tripping over me. At 7:10, I called St. Mary's Hospital. This is Jack Coleman, Abby's father. Yes, Mr. Coleman. I'm coming for discharge at 0800. I want her taken out the back, no public hallways, and no visitors unless I'm physically present. Not her mother, not her friends, no one. The nurse hesitated, then said, "We can arrange that." "Thank you," I said and hung up. I called Hannah next. She answered on the third ring, voice still thick from sleep. "Maddox?" she asked immediately. "In custody for now," I said. I'm picking up Abby in less than an hour. Keep the chain on the door until I tell you otherwise. She's going to be so happy to see you. I almost said me too, but stopped. My focus wasn't on the reunion, it was on the plan. I booted up the laptop and began transferring last night's footage to 3 encrypted drives. Each clip was labeled with time, location, and camera angle. Front porch, 21, 17 hours. Kitchen entry, 21 and 19 hours. Maddox dialogue, in 21 and 20 hours. One drive went into a fireproof lockbox in my closet. The second would go to Marcus. The third to my lawyer. Evidence without redundancy is just hope. And hope isn't a plan. By 7:45, Marcus was knocking on my door, cardboard tray of coffee in one hand. You look like hell, he said, setting it down. I need 10 more hours before Maddox makes bail, I said. You'll have less than 8. Then we make every minute count. We left together for the hospital. Neither of us spoke much. There wasn't anything to say that the next 12 hours wouldn't answer. Abby was ready when we arrived. Pink hoodie zipped to her chin, hair pulled back, a small backpack in her lap. The bruises on her jaw were fading to green and yellow. When she saw me, she smiled, not big, not dramatic, just enough to tell me she'd been holding her breath for days and could finally let it out. Daddy, she said quietly. I crouched, ready to come home. She nodded, then asked, will he find us? Not if I can help it, I said, meaning every word. The nurse led us through the service corridor, past mop bucket, supply carts, and a faint smell of disinfectant to a side door where Marcus waited with the car. Abby climbed in next to me, clutching her backpack like armor. The entire ride back, she stayed quiet, staring out the window as if checking for shapes she feared she might recognize. At the motel, Hannah opened the door just wide enough for Abby to slip inside. Lila was at the table, a mug of coffee between her hands, eyes rimmed red. She looked at Abby first, relief washing over her face, then at me. Thank you, she said. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. Protecting her life didn't erase the choices that put us here. After making sure Abby was settled, I drove to the hardware store. Bought new locks, reinforced strike plates, heavy-duty deadbolts, and a safe for documents. From there, I went to an electronics store for a new security system, 360-degree cameras, cloud backup, instant alerts. Back at the house, I installed everything myself. Each screw was a declaration I wasn't waiting for trouble to knock. I was making sure trouble couldn't get in at all. By mid-afternoon, I'd filed for an emergency restraining order extension. I attached everything: last night's video, the audio of Maddox's threat, Brick's parole violation, the hospital incident report. I handed one set to the DA's office, another to Kerrigan, and one to my lawyer. The goal wasn't just to win in court, it was to make sure Maddox knew every move he made from now on was in my territory. That evening, I sat in the living room again. Abby was in the next room drawing. Hannah was on the couch with a book. The air smelled like dinner warming in the oven. And for the first time in weeks, my shoulders weren't knotted. I still kept the Glock close, but it wasn't in my lap. I wasn't waiting for Maddox tonight. I was planning for every tomorrow. Growth, I realized, isn't about feeling fearless. It's about having more tools than the thing that scares you. Last week, Maddox dictated the fight. Last night, I took the script. Today, I started writing the rest of the story, and in my version, my daughter grows up without knowing the sound of boots on a porch in the dark. And that's a story I intend to finish. The night air in Nevada doesn't simply settle, it presses against you, testing the seams of your resolve. Out here, sound travels far, but silence travels farther. I stood on my porch with a glass of water, leaning into the railing, like it could anchor me, eyes on the street. The sodium lights had been fixed, bathing the pavement in a steady amber glow. The corner that had been pitch black during Maddox's approach now lay bare under that light, every crack in the asphalt visible. To an outsider, it might seem harmless. But to me, harmless was just danger taking a breath. Inside the house carried a different weight than it had 2 nights ago. Abby's door was half closed, a thin stripe of warm light spilling into the hallway. Hannah was on the couch, the faint scent of chamomile tea drifting from the mug beside her. The fridge hummed in the kitchen. These were the sounds of normal life, the kind I used to take for granted. Now every one of them was a reminder of why I stayed alert. 2 days had passed since Maddox's arrest. He was still inside waiting for arraignment, but I knew the clock was ticking. Men like him didn't stay contained without finding cracks. The shift wasn't just in my security, it was in my head. For weeks, I'd been letting Maddox dictate the pace, reacting, waiting. But now I'd flipped the table. I had his words, his face, his men's mistakes evidence wrapped in a net of legal teeth. If he came back, he'd be walking into my arena. The next morning, I decided Abby needed something else, proof that her life could still be more than fear and hiding. We drove to the park just after sunrise, the air still carrying the cool edge of night. The grass was damp underfoot dew, turning each blade into a tiny prism. She ran ahead, hoodie bouncing against her back, sneakers splashing in shallow puddles. I sat on a bench watching her climb the swings. She looked over her shoulder once, as if checking that I was still there. I gave her a nod. She smiled and kicked off, letting the swing carry her higher. That smile hit harder than anything Maddox had thrown at me. It wasn't big or cinematic, it was quiet, but it was free. The kind of smile that said I forgot for a moment, and that I realized was the real win. For the next hour, I pushed her on the swing, listened to her laugh, and let my guard down just enough to feel the morning. We stopped for ice cream on the way back. Abby chose chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. I went for plain vanilla, partly because I liked it, partly because I wanted something steady in a world that hadn't been steady for weeks. Halfway through her cone, she leaned across the table. "I think you're the strongest person I know." I wanted to tell her that strength wasn't about winning fights. It was about knowing which ones not to start, about building walls that didn't just keep danger out, but kept hope in. But instead, I just said, "I think you are." Back home, Hannah had lunch ready. She watched Abby chatter about the swings and the ice cream, a look in her eyes I couldn't quite name, part relief, part regret. We didn't talk about Maddox. We didn't need to. His absence spoke louder than his presence ever had. That night after Abby was asleep, I sat at my desk with the laptop. I went through the evidence one more time, checking file names, timestamps, and clarity. It wasn't just about building a case, it was about making sure I had control of the story from start to finish. I thought back to the man I'd been before Maddox reappeared in our lives. Reactive, defensive, just trying to survive each day without losing ground. That man had been replaced by someone else, someone who understood that survival wasn't enough. Control was the goal, and control meant that Maddox would never again dictate the terms of my life or my daughter's. When the files were uploaded to the DA's office, I shut the laptop and walked to Abby's room. She was curled under her blanket, breathing softly, her small hand peeking out near the pillow. I stood there for a while, listening to that steady rhythm. For the first time, I wasn't wondering if I could keep her safe. I knew I could, because I'd built something Maddox couldn't touch, a mindset stronger than any lock or wall. Back on the porch, I looked at the street. It wasn't harmless, not really, but now neither was I. If these past weeks taught me anything, it's that strength isn't about winning every fight. It's about refusing to fight on someone else's terms. Maddox wanted me reactive, cornered, burning energy just to stay upright. The moment I stopped playing by his script, I took the power back. Strength also isn't about being fearless. I was afraid every single day. Afraid for Abby, afraid for what Maddox might do next. But fear doesn't have to be the driver. It can be the fuel. It sharpens your focus, forces you to prepare, pushes you to see angles you'd otherwise miss. Most importantly, I learned that protection isn't just a wall you build, it's the ground you claim. Locks, cameras, legal paperwork, they're all tools. But the real defense is the mindset that says, "This is my ground. I set the rules." Maddox can circle all he wants, but he'll never own the map again. We all face our own Maddox, someone or something that tries to control our pace, keep us reactive, strip away our peace. It might be a toxic person, a hostile workplace, or even our own inner doubts. The strategy is the same: stop giving them the script. First, gather your evidence, facts, resources, allies. Second, build your defense systems, routines, boundaries. And finally, flip the ground. Make them play inside your rules, not theirs. This isn't just about self-defense, it's about self-direction. Life's not won by avoiding every hit, it's won by deciding which hits are worth taking and making sure you're the one deciding when and where.